Today let's look at queen attacking the enemy king. For a king there are three different positions which we need to consider. The first one is the corner, the next one is the edges, and the last one is the interiors. These are important because when a king is in the corner there are 3 squares where it can move to. When a king is on the edge there are 5 squares, and when the king is on an internal square there are 8 squares where it can move to. So having an idea of these will be really helpful when we are trying to attack the enemy king with our queen. Whenever we are attacking the enemy king with our queen, if there is a support for our queen, then we will be able to enter any one of these squares and give a check to the king. If we don't have a power, we will not be able to do that, as an enemy king can capture it. So now let's look at like some of these positions. First we'll start with the when the king is in the interior position. So now let's say we need to give a check to the king, and let's say the rook is in this position. So now if you look at all the squares that the king can move to in right away, so these will be the 8 squares. Now let us say that we have our queen in this position. Okay, so now let's say this position. So now because we know that there is a rook here, we can go closest to the king, that is the adjacent square, and then we can give a check. Now in this position, if the queen comes to c3 and gives a check, right? So in the beginning there were 8 squares where the king could move to, but now since the queen is already occupying 1 square, right? So these are the other remaining 8 squares, but since the queen is here, it will be able to attack in this direction. So even this square is also covered here, and queen can protect these squares, these squares, these squares, and this. So in short, out of the 8, king is already occupying one position, queen is out of the 8 squares, queen is already occupying one position, and then there are 5 squares that it can protect. So in short, it leaves us with 2 squares where the king will be able to move to, and this kind of holds good irrespective of any square from where the queen is attacking, if it stays within these 8 squares. So now let's say let the queen be in this particular position, and let's say the rook is in this position. Now since the square is protected, queen will be able to like get to this square and give a check, and the queen will be able to cover these squares, and since it can queen is attacking this, king cannot go here also. So again, as you can see, it forms this kind of V shape or C shape that you can consider, that leaves with 2 squares which are opposite to the queen. So generally, like whenever we are giving a check, we can directly look at like what are these 2 squares that is in the opposite direction. Whatever is the direction from which the queen is attacking, look at the opposite 2 diagonal squares you can consider, and if the king cannot escape to those squares, you can pretty much consider that it's a checkmate. So now for example, let's assume that in these 2 positions we are having black pawns. So now if there is a rook here which is supporting, and queen let's say moves from any position to this and gives a check, now king doesn't have like any positions to escape to, so which will be a checkmate. So this is the case in terms of internal squares. The same variation will happen on the edges also, but instead of considering 8 squares, we can consider only the 5 squares or the 3 squares, so it will become like much more evident. So in short, the idea is to make sure that look at the 3 cross 3 in which the king is sitting. So excluding the king, you have other 8 squares. In that, queen is already if the queen is supported, it can go and like take attack, give a check to the king from close by, and then there are 5 squares that the queen is guarding, which leaves us with like 2 squares which is generally in the opposite direction, irrespective of where the king is, where the queen is attacking from. You can always look at the opposite direction, or let's say if it is diagonal also, even in that case queen will cover these squares, and because of this it will be able to cover this square as well, which leaves us with only these 2 squares which the queen cannot guard. So if there is pawns or pieces from the enemy side itself which will pretty much block it, leading to a uh, uh, when we give a check, it will lead to a checkmate. Or if the squares are also guarded by, let's say, some other pieces, so even in that case also it will be a checkmate. So this kind of gives you an idea of which you can make use of when your queen is attacking the opposite queen.